Hey there, and welcome back to another Ben McGreevy Sports Podcast. Today's show is pretty loaded. We're going to break down all of December the 28th hockey games. There were a lot of great games on December 28th. We're going to break all of those down. We're then going to talk some World Juniors, and then we're going to finish off the show by talking about the current state of the Nashville Predators. So let's go ahead and get right into it on today's Ben McGreevy Sports Podcast. We're going to start out today's show by walking through yesterday's NHL games. Now, if you enjoy this, we've never done this before, but we're going to try this. If you enjoy breakdowns of games from the day before, write it down in the comments below. Send me a tweet and tell me you like it. And maybe we'll make this a more often thing. It would take me less time to sit there and produce a recap of games than it would to do maybe a full podcast here and there. So if you enjoy what we're about to do, go ahead and let me know. But we're going to break down just the games from the previous night, walk through who won those games and some thoughts that I had on those games from last night. We're going to start out with Pittsburgh and Detroit. This was the game last night. As a matter of fact, it was an incredible hockey game. Pittsburgh jumped out to a 4-0 lead. And so immediately everyone is sitting there saying, you know what, this game's over. It's not going anywhere. I don't know about you, but when I see a game that's 4-0, I'm generally not going to turn it on to watch it. If I see a game go 4-0, I'm going to go to a different game to watch a different game, especially if there's another game on, or even like during college football bowl season, I will flip over to like a bowl game. Like there was a really good couple of bowl games on last night with North Carolina and Oregon and Kansas and Arkansas. So like those games were way better options than like a 4-0 Pittsburgh versus Detroit game, right? But this did not stay a terrible game. The Detroit Red Wings end up coming back. They score 4 goals in regulation, send it to overtime, and end up with a beautiful feed in overtime to score the goal. And then he hit him with the gritty, which is one of the most it was not a hockey moment in what we're used to hockey moments being, but it was an epic moment. Okay. It was just an incredible thing where he sat there and then and grittied. All right. And that's embarrassing that I just did that. If you're watching on YouTube, you saw me do a little bit of an attempt at one, but honestly, that's the stuff that is very exciting. And I think people love to see, and that it shows player personality. And I would love to see that kind of come more throughout the NHL as time goes on. There was something that really, like, the main thing that stood out to me about this game last night was, and this is maybe a weird thing, but it was the way Dylan Larkin reacted after the first goal of the game. So Larkin scores this goal. They're down 4-1, okay, after this goal. And Dylan Larkin reacted like they just tied it up in the third period. Now, you might be sitting there saying, well, that's just over emotional, over dramatic, whatever. No. Let me tell you why this was a big deal. Because that is the captain of the team indicating to the rest of the team that, no, it might be 4-1 now, but we aren't out of this. We can come back in this game. I've loved Dylan Larkin for a long time. And what I saw out of him in that moment said, you know what? Dylan Larkin is a player. He's a leader. He's the type of guy that a lot of people would want on their team. And I feel terrible for him that he's been stuck in Detroit through the rebuild years. But I hope that as Detroit slowly gets a little bit better, Larkin's going to get a few years of just a really good team there in Detroit. So I'll say this, that was a defining moment for me for the Detroit Red Wings, for Dylan Larkin. That just showed me, like, man, that team wasn't out of it the second Larkin scored and didn't just kind of pout like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. He scored and was in the second period, and it was like, this means something. We're coming back in this thing. And they stormed all the way back. And what had to have been one of the most fun games they've played in a long time, and ended up winning that game 5-4 in overtime. Sadly, it was on away ice, but that building would have just been out of their minds bonkers if it was in Detroit. But you got to imagine that if you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan who was at that game, you are beyond frustrated at that this morning. All right, moving on. Let's go to the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Anaheim Ducks. Now, what ends up happening in this game is Vegas ends up losing. So the Ducks win 3-2, but it's in a shootout. So it's kind of like a fluke difference. It's really a tie with a skills competition. Here's something that was very interesting to me, and I love that Bruce Cassidy did this. Adin Hill let in 2 goals on the first 5 shots of the game. All right, that's not good. It was awful. If you sit there and watch the second goal that Anaheim scored in that game, it was a simple toss in. Like NHL goalies should make that save 99 out of 100 times, probably 100 out of 100. There was a little bit of a screen, but not enough to where an NHL goalie shouldn't make a save. Starters in the NHL make that save every single time. Adin Hill did not. And what I love here is that Bruce Cassidy didn't just sit there and say, it's all right. It's only the second goal of the game. We'll leave him in there. He pulled him immediately. It was like he immediately saw that, hey, you know what? Adin Hill doesn't have it tonight. He's off. Let's give ourselves a chance at this thing. It's not worth losing a game just because the tradition is you pull a goalie after he lets in 3 or 4 goals. No, he pulled him immediately. That's the type of coaching that I love to see. And I love that because what it does is it indicates to your team of we're not accepting a loss tonight. This isn't just a chill night where if you play bad, you can stay in because it's just a cycle and it's a long year. No. Every game matters. They put in Logan Thompson. Logan Thompson shuts the Anaheim Ducks out until the shootout where the Ducks end up winning, but he looks good and the Vegas Golden Knights end up scoring a couple of goals to send that to overtime and eventually the shootout. I wanted to talk a little bit about Adin Hill real quick. He's a guy who's played all right, but he has an .899 save percentage in 13 games played this season. That's not good. Now, we could talk a lot about Vegas. And obviously the Ducks fans are probably sitting there saying, no, talk about the Ducks, talk about the Ducks. Sorry, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about Vegas. When Jack Eichel comes back, look, the Vegas Golden Knights are already really good. They're already leading the Pacific. They're already 4th in the NHL. But if the Vegas Golden Knights are able to get Jack Eichel back into the lineup and get him scoring, I think the Vegas Golden Knights have an incredible chance at going all the way this year. Logan Thompson has been good. He's kept them in games. He's won them games. It's just been an all-around good year for Vegas so far, and Jack Eichel has been hurt for a lot of it. That's been his problem since the beginning of his career, and it looks like it's going to remain a problem. And it's just like, man, if Eichel could put together a season, what could he be? Let's hope he stays healthy for the playoffs for the Vegas Golden Knights because you would love to see him dominate in the playoffs. But right now, he is going to be a name that is quickly forgotten if he can't stay healthy. And some people just can't. And that might be a bummer for Jack Eichel. All right. I want us to move on to the Calgary Flames versus the Seattle Kraken. This was a national game in the United States last night, so maybe a lot of you got to watch it if you don't have ESPN Plus. But Jonathan Huberdeau, by the way, the Calgary Flames are going to win this game 3-2. Jonathan Huberdeau is going to get the go-ahead goal with about 8 minutes to go in the third period to give the Calgary Flames the lead, and they're going to hold on to win it. Now, you got to love that for Jonathan Huberdeau. He has had it's weird because he's had a rough year. He's still had a pretty good season, but not a Jonathan Huberdeau season. You know, he's been 100-point plus player the last couple years, and you would love to see him continue that in Calgary, but he hasn't been there yet. He's at about 0.8 points a game, which once again, still a good player. But it's taken him a little bit to get settled in. So I imagine for him for Calgary, it was so good to see him score that goal last night to take the lead, to win the game. Calgary needs wins badly right now. If you look at the standings as it sits right now in the Pacific Division, you are going to see that the Calgary Flames are third, but Seattle has 4 games in hand and is only a point behind. So that game for Calgary last night, that win in regulation, was a big, big deal. And of course, Edmonton is sitting there in 5th place in the Pacific, or third in the wild card right now. So that's just a weird thing. Edmonton, by the way, is only 1 point back of Calgary, and they have a game in hand. So Calgary really needs to be winning. So this was big for them last night. I also want to say this. I love the Seattle uniforms so much. I think their jerseys are silky smooth. I think they look good. I think it was a success. I know that's a controversial opinion, but watching the Calgary Flames road jerseys, which are those gorgeous white with the red and orange, versus the Seattle Kraken home. I mean, it was a treat to the eyes. It was absolutely a joy. I loved every second of that. And it was just a back and forth game. That's what hockey is all about. And so that was a really entertaining one there. And it was good for Jonathan Huberdeau to get on the board. I'll also say this, Jordan Eberle looks great for Seattle this year. He's everything that kind of I thought that he was. I always thought Eberle is a good player. He's showing it this year. And Seattle's a fun team to watch. They just work hard, and they're fun all around. All right, let's move on to Boston versus New Jersey. Now, New Jersey loses this game 3-1. One of the goals was an empty net goal. It's very interesting because the New Jersey Devils started out so well this year throughout the first October and November. And then December hit, and the Devils have been bad. They're I'm going to get this exactly right. They are 2-7-1. So 2 wins, 7 losses, 1 overtime loss in their last 10 games. What they were doing was not sustainable, right? Winning whatever it was, 15 straight or something like that, is not sustainable. What you can't do is go the opposite direction. And although they've won 2 games, they've gone the opposite direction entirely. They haven't evened out. They totally have disappeared off the face of the map. The New Jersey Devils are going to probably make playoffs because honestly, at this point, it's hard to miss playoffs. I say it's hard to miss playoffs. They only have 46 points, and there are people knocking on the door wanting in. And so I would not be shocked. I'm going to sit here and give you some numbers here. The Pittsburgh Penguins are 1 point behind the New Jersey Devils. The Washington Capitals are 2 points behind the New Jersey Devils. The Devils do have some games in hand on Washington. The New York Rangers are 3 points behind the New Jersey Devils. The New York Islanders are 4 points behind the New Jersey Devils. Guys, the New Jersey Devils can miss the playoffs if they don't start winning games. Now, granted, they did play Boston last night. They've played a tough schedule, but let me point this out real quickly. Boston, and I'll say this as well. Sorry, I'm not finishing a sentence. The Devils played pretty well last night. They couldn't put the puck in the net, but Hallmark had an incredible game for Boston. He was making saves that he shouldn't. Boston is somehow staying dominant. They're 7-1-2 in their last 10 games. They have won 28 times. They've only lost 4 times in regulation. They're about to hit 60 points, 35 games into the year. They are just dominating. It's one of the most dominant performances we've seen of any team in an incredibly long time. So that is something to be interested in, to watch, to see if they can be a team that is going to be a team that can do something major in the future. But Bruins are doing things that is just ridiculous. And it's almost like they kind of stood up and said, you know what? This might be our last chance with this group. And I'm not saying that it is, but like Marchand's getting older. Bergeron definitely. I mean, if Bergeron doesn't retire, which he's dominating this year, which is unbelievable. But you start sitting there and looking at their lineup, they're not a super young team and they're core players, right? And so this might be it. And they might be going in with that mentality of, hey, let's dominate. Now, oftentimes the team that dominates in the regular season struggles in the playoffs. You just get hot at the wrong times. But I don't know. Boston's kind of built to win. And so that was that. Like I said, Devils played a good game, but they're really struggling. And if they don't right the ship soon, they're going to miss the playoffs. And then maybe the sorry Lindy chants are going to become fire Lindy chants again, because that team has too much skill to miss the playoffs. All right. And we're going to wrap up our game wrap up with Montreal and Tampa Bay. This is the one game last night that wasn't really a great hockey game. Tampa Bay just wrecked Montreal. It was a shutout until the final 2.5 minutes, which I hate that for Vasilevsky, by the way. I always hate to see a goaltender have a shutout stripped from them, especially like in a game like this where it didn't matter. Like Montreal scoring a goal did not matter in the grand scheme of things. So I hated to see Vasilevsky lose that shutout. But man, Tampa Bay, it's almost getting irritating how good they are every year. They lose players, they're still good. They lose players, they're still good. They lose players, they're still good. I mean, what they're doing is just ridiculous. John Cooper deserves the Jack Adams maybe every year. And yes, he has good players. But getting those good players to produce every single year is unbelievable. And so I love that from John Cooper. I love the way the Tampa Bay Lightning play. Their puck movement is just ideal. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Braden Point dominated. He had 2 goals last night. He leads the team in goal scoring. He's not the leader in points. Kucherov and Stamkos are still ahead for the Tampa Bay Lightning in points there. But what you see is Braden Point last night had a play that was Connor McDavid-esque. Now, I'm not saying he is Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon. What I am saying is Braden Point, when you start looking at centers across the league, you're not going to take many players over Braden Point. At one point in this game, he looked up. There were 4 Montreal defenders and the goaltender, Jake Allen, in front of him. And he said, oh, we'll go through him and score a goal. And he did it. I mean, it was very McDavid-esque. And so to me, that is something that I sit there and watch and I think, wow, that is incredible. That is just phenomenal from Braden Point. It's weird if you were to sit down with most teams and say, take your number 1 center and trade for Braden Point. That would be a really interesting, a very interesting thing on which teams would immediately do that. And I think a lot of them would. I really do think a lot of them would. I know here in Nashville, no offense to Duchesne or Johansson, but yes, immediately you would make that trade for one of those guys for Braden Point. Take contracts out of it. Just put skill in there. And we could go around the league and just say, yeah, Braden Point's kind of one of the best guys in the league. And you would stick him in there above a lot of people. But he's a good player. Tampa's always fun to watch. They're proving to me that they're going to go down as one of the greatest teams in the history of the sport of hockey. Even if they don't win the Stanley Cup this year, they're just dominant all the way around, which is really interesting. I wanted us to briefly move on to the World Juniors because the World Juniors is happening right now. The World Juniors is it's definitely my second favorite tournament behind the Stanley Cup playoffs of any sport. All right, so you have the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then you have the World Juniors. And a lot of people in the United States don't watch the World Juniors. And I want to say this: if you're not watching the World Juniors, watch the World Juniors. All right, it is on NHL Network here in the States. It's on TSN in Canada. But by the way, if we use YouTube TV and stream, I go get Fubo TV this time of year every year, just so I can watch the World Juniors. Okay. It's worth it. It's totally worth it. It's always worth it because of the value of this tournament. I recommend you do it as well if you are also a streamer. Also, ESPN, while I have you, you're not listening to me, but if you are, please do your best to try to get the World Juniors because you want to build people to watch your NHL games. Get people invested into this tournament and then around Christmas. That is so exciting that people love to watch. Anyways, it's been a weird tournament so far. Finland lost to Switzerland right off the bat. That's weird. Switzerland's not really that great this year, but they lost. The Swiss beat the Finns. I mean, that was a weird way to start the tournament. Canada lost to Czechia or the Czech Republic. I mean, that's wild. And then the Czech Republic went on and slaughtered the Austrians. I mean, the Czechians they might be solid this year. They could be a force to be reckoned with. I'll be really interested to see if they can keep winning in these preliminary rounds, to see where they get placed. And then the United States lost to the Slovaks. Now the United States also beat Latvia. And the United States played today. And I said Canada lost to Czechia, but Canada beat Germany like a drum. So it's very interesting because it's just kind of a weird tournament so far on where things are going to fall. I would love to see, I have the USA jersey here. I would love to see the United States of America make a run at this thing. It's always entertaining to watch the USA make a run at gold. And even though I won't be able to watch the gold medal game, we'll be in Washington, D.C. For the Preds Capitals game. So if, that's a video to keep an eye on here in the future. But that gold medal game between, like, if the United States is in it, it's always so exciting no matter who they're playing, specifically if it's Canada, just because of the natural rivalry there. But the World Juniors has been so fascinating, and I'm pumped for tournament play to get going there in the World Juniors. But Czechia has been such a shock in this tournament so far. All right, I want to end today's show by kind of talking about the Nashville Predators, and we're not going to spend a long time on them. I've got the beautiful new reverse retro here. This was a Christmas gift by my lovely wife. It makes me so happy. All right, this is just a nostalgic thing. First thing is first, Nashville, make these your full-time jerseys. All right, just go for it. This is so pretty. It's been 10 years since the gold originally debuted. It's time to make a little bit of a change. I think that's okay. I think it would be awesome. I just think this stands out and is incredible. But I hate to say this, but the Nashville Predators, I don't really think have a shot at making playoffs. And their last 10 games, they're 2-5-3. That's bad. I was with my dad at the game the other night, and Dad has watched a lot of hockey in his life just because of me, going to my high school games and then watching because I had it on growing up. But he doesn't follow it closely, and he leaned down to me and said, "Man, they just look so sloppy," while we were watching this game. And I said, "Dad, it's been the case all year. It is horrible to watch." The Arizona Coyotes are only 4 points back on Nashville, and Arizona had like a 18-game road trip at the beginning of the season. There's a big issue in Nashville right now when it comes to the skill. Now, it's funny because last time we had a podcast, Nashville won 2 games after this because we were like, well, it's about time to blow it up. Unfortunately for the Nashville Predators, I really do think you have to start making some major changes. And David Poile has never given out no trade clauses. And it hasn't worked for him. So he started doing it. Here's the deal. Now you need to start trading some players. You need to start saying, okay, what can I give away for a draft pick? Now, I'm a big Ryan Johansson fan. I love Ryan Johansson. What he brings to the dressing room is way more than just his hockey playing, right? That's important to note. But if you could trade him at the deadline for a first-round pick and a prospect, and make his price pretty high. I mean, he's still a beast of a player, but it's time to start loading up for the future. And I just don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Now, with a coaching change, could you maybe get a spark that launches you into the playoffs? Maybe. I could see it happening. But as they sit right now, they're not going to make the playoffs. They are, it's interesting. Montreal, I was sitting there looking, I was like, man, Montreal's not good this year. Nashville's not better. Nashville has the same amount of points as the Montreal Canadiens. To put it into perspective, they are only 9 points ahead of the Anaheim Ducks. If you look at the league, I'm just going to, this is as of December 29th. When you look at the league, Nashville's 24th in the NHL. This draft is good. Give yourself a lottery pick. Sometimes you got to be bad to be good. Let Hines maybe be the scapegoat, have a bad year, trade some guys for some first-round picks, load up this year. It's going to be hard to get first-round picks in this draft, I won't lie, but if you have a shot at Connor Bedard, which Chicago gets Bedard, is going to be so irritating. Columbus will just kill his career. Anaheim will be a beast of a team if they get Connor Bedard. But, maybe it's worth taking a shot to get him, being bad enough to go out there and get him. I don't know. It's very tough to say where Nashville is right now because they're inconsistent. They're hideous to watch. They can't make passes. Just an ugly overall product on the ice right now for the Nashville Predators. And I'll be interested to see if anything changes. And I'm sure the stress level in the organization is incredibly high right now. I would love to get Ryan McDonough's take on this situation because of where he's been in Tampa coming to this now. It would be very interesting to me. All right, that should about do it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. That means a ton to me if you listened all the way through. Once again, let me know in the comments if you liked that game breakdown. We might do it in a few days. I have a lot of extra time right now because of the holidays, and so I'm able to do some of this stuff. But if you guys really like it, maybe we can make it more of a consistent thing throughout the days, throughout this NHL season. I think it could be a pretty cool way to fill content on this channel for you guys if you're interested in that. If you have not subscribed on YouTube and you're listening on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. I haven't said this, but thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. It really means so much. And I am constantly blown away by that. That 1,000 of you said, yeah, we're going to subscribe to this channel and listen. If you're listening on podcasts, send it to a friend. Let your friends know that there's a podcast that they can listen to on their way to work, that they could possibly enjoy consuming some hockey content. And if we do more of these style of videos where we break down games, maybe we'll have more frequent posts on the podcast where you can kind of get a daily update on your drive to work or something like that. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.